Welcome to another episode of Ship a War, my review of Lincoln.
Ship a War. When ship happens, I'm there.
Now this review is going to be about this guy here, Lincoln, about a movie based off of this dude. This is my gas money, so I'm going to put this away. Anyways, so Lincoln, directed by Steven Spielberg, who I have to say is one of my favorite directors. I grew up on his films, but his past two previous films have been great disappointments for me. So I went into this film with pretty low expectations. Main reasons I went to go see this film is Steven Spielberg, please prove me wrong that you haven't lost your touch. And because I like politics, I like history, and a film about Lincoln is something that I'm going to go out and see regardless who directed it. So with that said, I really enjoyed this film. I had a very, very great time watching this film because, again, I'm really into politics. I love history. So seeing this moment in history, for American history, come to life on the big screen was just absolutely amazing. I have to say, it was very interesting to see this part of our history being played out and seeing the different politicians and seeing the different party lines and how they work together back then, because seeing it how it was back then and you look at how it is now, it really hasn't changed that much, at least when it comes to, you know, one party saying very horrible things about the other party or vice versa. And it really hasn't changed that much in that sense, but it's kind of funny to see the Republican Party be the party they were back then and seeing the Democrat Party be the party they were back then. What the Democrat and Republican Party are today and what they were back then are just completely different parties, and it's very interesting to see that again on the big screen. So this movie was really good. I would say if you know anything about Lincoln, you will not be spoiled while watching this film. Like, you don't sit there being like, oh my god, I wonder what happens next. I mean, if you sit through this movie and say that, I'm going to assume you slept through history class. But I have to say, prior to seeing the film, I assumed it was going to be like a biography on Lincoln. That's what I thought, because I didn't really read up on anything, only watched the trailer once. So I wasn't really aware what the movie was going to be exactly in regards to Lincoln. So I was surprised in a good way to find out the movie was actually going to be about the period in time where Lincoln is trying to pass the 13th Amendment and free the slaves. And the way they did the story was just so beautiful. There's some moments that I got chills. I was actually tearing up. It was just absolutely beautiful to see this moment in American history where they able to pass a law to make everybody equal, in a sense, at least for that point, because, you know, the civil rights for African Americans wasn't completely uplifted in that moment, but they were no longer slaves, but they were no longer completely equals either. But it was nice to just see that moment in our history. Again, if you know anything about Lincoln, there's a lot of little tidbits, especially with his sons. There's one scene where he's playing with his youngest son at the moment. If you know anything about his youngest son at that time, you would find his interaction with his son to be very endearing, knowing what ends up happening with him in the future of his life, something we do not see in this movie, but if you know the history, you will find these scenes very, very endearing and very sweet. As for the romance, there wasn't really a romance in the film per se. I mean, there's Abraham and his wife Mary, and you see their marriage and the things they go through, and you also get hinted by some certain things about the relationship that was rumored to be true. So I don't know why they put that in there, maybe just to, like, I guess, play with that idea. So that was, I guess, really fascinating to see in that sense. The other thing I really want to praise about this film are the actors. Daniel Day-Lewis, Tommy Lee Jones, Sally Field, they all did an absolutely amazing job. Daniel Day-Lewis, for me, was overall my favorite because he did a fantastic job playing Lincoln. I know everybody seems to really like Tommy Lee Jones, and I don't, you know, disagree with their opinion on his performance, because he was pretty great. He was actually had some of the funniest scenes in the movie, and he also had one of the most adorable, I guess you can say, scenes in the movie. Like, he had one scene that I started tearing up and crying during because it was just absolutely freaking adorable and beautiful, and it was by far the most touching scene throughout the whole movie. But for me, I have to give it to Daniel Day-Lewis, even though Tommy Lee Jones had some of the wittiest and funniest and just outright best lines in the film. I just personally like Daniel Day-Lewis because he was playing Lincoln, and he just did an absolutely amazing job being Abraham Lincoln. As for Joseph Gordon-Levitt, I have to say he really didn't stand out for me in the film. Like, he didn't play this really big role. He played Lincoln's son, Robert, and there was nothing that he really did that was like, wow, that was so amazing. That was great acting. It was just, he was there. He did his thing. He did a good job doing his thing, but he didn't stand out among everybody else who was in the film who just did an amazing job. But I'm not knocking him, just saying that he didn't really stand out for me overall in the film because he really didn't have a really big role in the film that had a lot of substance to it, but he still held his own for what he did have. But overall, this movie was really good. I really, really enjoyed it, but I have to admit, it's a very wordy film. There's a lot of terms, a lot of politic-related things. If you're not really into politics, if you're not really into wordy films, you're probably not going to really enjoy it because there's a lot of talking. If you're expecting to see like scenes from the Civil War and explosions and gunshots, and you're not going to get a lot of that. There's probably 2 to 3 scenes where you see any of that. Everything else for this 2 hours and 30-minute film, I think that's the time for this film, is mostly a lot of talking, a lot of setup of, you know, trying to get the 13th Amendment passed, and all kinds of good stuff like that. So if you're not really into that, I don't know if I would suggest the movie for you. But if you're a Steven Spielberg fan and you like historical films, please go see this movie because it was so nicely done. So that is all for this episode of Ship War. Goodbye, and until next time. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. Now, before you guys continue on with this review, I just want to warn you guys this is going to be a very spoiler-filled review. So if you haven't seen the episode yet, I suggest you stop this video and go watch the episode, and then possibly come back if you want to. So with that said, I have to say that I pretty much shot myself in the foot when it came to this episode, this pilot episode for this series, because I've been following it since it was announced, and so I've seen a lot of clips, a lot of trailers, a lot of promos,